You get a rush from making art, don't you? You love the feeling of making something that you're proud of. But that's not the only thing you get a rush from, is it? That's right, I know your secret. What do you not wish people knew? You can't fool me? Maybe you need to stop fooling yourself. Welcome to the Art Mentor. My name is Sean. Today we're going to talk about some of the most uncommonly spoken about toxic addictions that artists have that they need to conquer. But I'm going to gift you with some knowledge, friend, on why you feel that, why you do that, and how do you move past it. Your free art therapy session begins right now. Now, as a creative person, you feel pulled in a lot of different directions, don't you? You want to try this, you want to try that. You look over here and there's something really cool and exciting, and oh, look at that, a new pen, a new paper. And then over here, wow, I've never tried that before. Look at that cool new program, right? Because you are a creative person, your soul is just crying to keep trying new things and new things and new things. But have you ever thought that that's not a very healthy addiction either? Maybe what if you considered the fact that you bouncing around all the time is not helping you get better at the thing that you really do want to? Or do you even know what you want to get good at? Do you even know what you want to do? Do you even know what you actually want to pursue? Y'all, this brings up an addiction that I call toxic dabbling. And listen, I full on get this, especially if you've had any experience in art academia. This is traditionally how it goes. You try this, that, and the other thing. But that's all good because art is a set of transferable skills. In other words, what you do in one media, it directly translates into another. I'm saying that as an art education professional. However, though, now, what this often really stems from is a non-committal attitude because, to be honest, it's way easier for you to try something new than to go through the pain and discomfort of growing yourself through one thing that you really do want to get good at. And maybe tell me this, are you afraid of committing to one thing? Are you afraid that you're gonna feel boxed in or something like that? Well, I got some great advice for you right here. Because it's easier to feel like a novice than it is to feel like a mediocre artist, then here's what I'm gonna recommend for you, friend. Go ahead and just pick one main thing that you wanna do, just one. Just pick one of those, okay? And dedicate about 60 to 75% of your time towards that main thing. And then you can go ahead and spend the other like 25 to 40% doing the other things that come up. Y'all, I get it. Like every single year, there's a whole bunch of new things or new materials or new programs that come out and you want to have a go at it, right? It's natural. You're curious. That's all good, man. But if you do not ever try to commit to one thing, to get good at that one thing, I promise you this, you'll just be known for nothing. Do you really want that? Now, I'm going to go on a limb here and say you've probably got some amazing ideas, don't you? You've got some amazing ideas for some amazing pieces. You've got some amazing ideas for an IP. Maybe you've got your own story, or you want to make a video game, or you want to make a graphic novel or a manga or something like that, right? You've got insane ideas. And as a creative person, you're naturally feeling flooded with all of these great ideas because what you do actually produces more great ideas, doesn't it? And then so what do? Then you start to look up, well, how do I get these ideas out of my head? Because they shouldn't just die and suffer in there, right? You should put them down on paper, and then you should do this, and then you should do that, and you should structure it, and then you're gonna learn how to structure your ideas better and how to bring them out. But are you making art? Are you actually doing anything with those ideas? Because I just need to give you a hot take on this, y'all. Your ideas aren't worth that much. And whoa, no, I'm not putting you down, but I'm just gonna say this. You're gonna find a lot of really broke people with a lot of really, really great ideas. So what's the difference here? Is what are you doing, and specifically, what labor are you going through in order to bring those ideas to life? One of the most toxic traits a lot of artists have is that they trick themselves into thinking that somehow their ideas are going to produce a product. And my friend, they won't. You have to be the one that will produce that product. Listen, as somebody that's researched imagination very heavily, and I continue to for my own research in my doctoral program right now, I need to tell you this. Imagination comes from feeding it and through you laboring over the craft of creating imaginative products. So what I see a lot of artists do, instead of actually, I don't know, like starting to create characters for their comic or starting to create backgrounds or going through iterations for what they could look like, instead what they'll do is they'll overinvest into the story, or they'll overinvest into writing about it, they'll overinvest into thinking about it, and then they don't ever make anything. So my friend, what this really stems from is the fact that you are over-investing into your ideas and you're under-investing into your efforts. And that's not gonna produce anything, my friend. And your idea that's so great, no one's ever gonna care about it because no one's ever gonna know about it. So how do you get past this? You gotta balance this, okay? Listen, if you wanna sit there and bang out an arc of your story that you've got, then what you need to do is you need to section off. Okay, I'm only gonna do this, and then I'm gonna create it. And then I'm only gonna do this, and I'm only gonna create it. And by all means, look up how to do really great narrative structures. Look up how to tell a story. Look up how to get your writing better or how to get your dialogue better for your characters, okay? But if you're only doing that, you're not being a visual artist. And that's fine if you want to be a literary artist, but pick a lane. Because if you do want to be a visual artist, then you actually have to make it. You can't just let that idea linger in your head and die. Now, this next unhealthy artist addiction might surprise you, but let me just guess this. You're probably putting forth a lot of effort into learning your craft, right? You're putting a lot of effort into all of your practices, and you're putting a lot of effort into trying new things, and you're putting a lot of effort into you just diving into art all the time. Maybe you're even living and breathing this. Maybe you're even feeling exhausted by it, right? Well, that's the toxic trait here, is that you're over-investing into being an artist and under-investing into being a human. And this brings up a really philosophical question of what is art? Philosophically speaking, and I'm speaking from a research standpoint here, is that art is an interior reflection of yourself. And that's why many people don't like to be artists. It is not because it's too hard. It's not because it's inaccessible. It's not because it's elite. It's not because it's gatekept or any crap like that, like the AI bros say. Instead, it's because people don't like to explore themselves. It's because people think that somehow that if you just pound away at skills, you are going to level up into this like mega awesome art guru. Y'all, that's not going to be the case. And that's not something that I promote either on my channel. Honestly, what you have to do is you have to level up both the artwork and the artist. And if you're neglecting the artist, you friend, then you are never going to get to the place that you want to be because you forgot half of the reason why you actually like this. Because in exploring yourself as an artist, and that's what you are, y'all, you're an explorer, is you are going to combat everything that people don't like to do. Every thought, every insecurity. You're gonna have to deal with failure. You're gonna have to deal with loneliness. You're gonna have to deal with also developing, though, peace and confidence. And how do you combat difficult times? How do you emotionally handle things versus you just run away from them? By leveling up your mindset, you will level up as an artist. I guarantee it. Because in growing into the artist you want to be, you have to think differently than how you currently do right now. And if you are neglecting that, you are also neglecting your potential growth. And that is literally why all throughout my channel, I promote this concept of developing the artist and the artwork together to develop some type of mindfulness. And if you're in for that, please make sure that you like and subscribe because I'm here to support every facet of you being an artist just like this, to let you know that you need to develop yourself. You need to invest into your mindset. You need to invest into your personal development as well. And if you need some resources for that, let me know down below and I'll definitely recommend you some people to watch too. In my interactions with artists, both young and old and everything in between, what do you think the number one thing that everybody complains about is? What is the number one thing that you wish you had more of? What do you wish that you just had insane, copious amounts of? I'm talking about time here, y'all. Do you ever feel like, hey, I don't have enough time? Or no, I can't do this, or I can't do that, or there's just not enough time for me to invest into my artwork, or I wish I had more time, or I don't have 8 hours a day to dedicate to my artwork. Y'all, this is a really toxic trait of artists who are not getting to where they want to be because artists love to complain about a lack of time. And y'all, I just need to let you know this. The artists that you look up to, that you admire, that you follow on social media right now, and y'all have the same 24 hours a day. The way that you're gonna get to where you wanna go, friend, is not by you having more time, but it's about you utilizing the time that you currently have. It's about how are you managing your time, but then also this too. Where are your dead zones? Where are your pitfalls? Where are your speed traps? You need to think about this instead, rather than you complaining about, like so many artists do, I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that. But let me just ask you this question. If I were to follow you around for an entire week, would I see pockets of time where I'm like, I'm excuse me, yeah, you could be working on some artwork right now. Hey, poke, poke. You can definitely go ahead and do that thing that you said you didn't have enough time for. Or how about this too? Check your screen time lately? I bet you can find yourself some more time on that one. While time is a resource that all artists do complain about, here's the thing that I want to encourage you to do instead. I want you to view your time as a resource, and it is a resource that you need to harness and you need to exploit to do better, because you can do it better if you manage your time better, if you eliminate your distractions in a more efficient way, and if you stop complaining about what you do or you don't have, because I guarantee you this, there's somebody that's in infinitely less circumstances than you are right now watching this video, who is not as privileged as you, who doesn't have the blessings that you do, who is gonna do more than you. So if they can do it, what's your excuse? So I've got some really great ideas for you on how to do this. Number one is that you have to commit to it. You have to take it seriously. And what that means is that you're gonna have to feel comfortable eliminating distractions. Not to say all the way, my friend, but limit it. So what you're gonna have to do is limit some of the stuff that we're talking about in this video today, because it's toxic for you and it's not gonna help you, friend. Here's another thing you could start to do, and I always recommend this, but start to personify your artwork, okay? Treat it like it is a child. It's your child, okay? Look, my kids come to me and say, Daddy, I'm hungry. I'm not like, I don't really feel like it today. I don't have enough time for that. Or, there's no time for me to eat dinner. I mean, do you really have to eat? We did that yesterday. So if I wouldn't do that to them, why would you do that to your artwork? Treat it just like that, because you probably will have a worse time letting someone else down than letting yourself down, won't you? Now, have you ever noticed how many artists have really bad chronic physical conditions? How many artists have wrist pain, joint pain, muscle tenderness, and wrist tenderness, and everything like that? Have you ever noticed how many artists basically, even in their adulthood, still have the physique of like a 12-year-old ballet dancer? One of the things that I think is really over-glorified in artwork, and tell me if you've noticed this too, is we really glorify inactivity. And listen, I get it. I really, really do. Because what are you doing when you're making artwork? You're doing literally the most unhealthy thing for you, physically speaking. You're sitting down, you're hunched over, and you're drawing for hours, and you're solely focused there. And where are you typically? You're also inside. We have this really bad, slothful trait about us, where because we are solely locked into being indoors and in terrible postures for us, and because we're not physically active, we are then prone to so many bad chronic conditions. And I'm not saying that's the only reason. I'm not ignorant on that. Of course, some things are outside of your control, y'all, and I can't speak on how to do that better because I'm not a doctor on it. But I do want to speak to you about the fact that you can do a lot of preventative things. And what I want to encourage you to start to do, y'all, is to think about this. If you are more active, you will be more creatively active. If you can spur the physical body, you will also then champion your artistic body. Have you ever thought of it like that? So what can you do, y'all? Listen, I'm not saying that you need to start running 100-mile race ultra marathons, okay? But just think about this. How can you start to incorporate a little more physical activity from you? Like, how can you go ahead and take walks, ride bikes? Can you start to go to the gym? Can you do some stuff at home? Y'all, you're on YouTube right now. There are like 10-minute workouts that you can do in a day. Again, if you're complaining, I don't have any time, Sean, well, listen, you've got 10 minutes a day. I 100% guarantee you can fit that into your schedule. What else can you do from that one? Can you make it a group effort? Do you want to take some group classes? Do you want to do it maybe with your spouse or your boyfriend, girlfriend? How could you do that? How could you incorporate more physical activity? And on that note too, how can you get your butt outside? Y'all, we live inside so much of our time here. But listen, what can you do to just inspire your creative soul through your physical being? Because if you're gonna want to sustain your efforts, y'all, you're gonna get really negative, you're gonna get really depressed, you're gonna get really anxious from being inactive and being somebody who has the posture of a jumbo shrimp. It's terrible for y'all, and you need to get your butt up and you need to get outside, and you'd be surprised how many artists that are at a really professional level that prioritize this. And if you wanna get there too, friend, I'm not saying it's the only thing you gotta do, but it could definitely help you out. And even if it doesn't get you to a professional level, it'll make you feel better. Have you ever thought about that? All right, level with me here. Have you ever started to make fun of your own artwork? Have you ever looked at it and been like, woof, this sucks, I'm terrible, what is that? oh my God, do you ever share your artwork? And then you laugh at it with your friends and you're like, look at that jacked up hand, or look at that terrible face, or like, oh God, what was I on when I made this thing? Do you ever then get into these types of conversations? Do these dialogues ring a bell for you? Do they resonate with you a little bit? Because I'm gonna let you know this right now. This just brings up another really toxic addiction that artists have, which is being self-deprecating. Have you ever noticed how many artists almost seemingly enjoy putting themselves down? I'm gonna say they do this in a lot of different ways, that they show nothing but complete disrespect to themselves and their efforts. And what I wanna ask you is this: what does that do for you? Why do you do that? Maybe you feel stressed out. Maybe you're just dissatisfied with it. And I get that, okay? And maybe too, you're lost on how to do better. And that is a totally normal and natural thing. But the issue as to why this is a totally toxic addiction, but the words that you're using, you need to be really guarded with them, especially on your interior dialogue with yourself, much less an exterior dialogue with somebody else. Because what you're doing in creating this nasty process, this toxic cycle of talking down about your artwork, is honestly, you're just looking for permission to quit. You're looking for permission to somehow lower your efforts so that you don't see it as a fruitful endeavor, and then it becomes less meaningful for you. And then by attaching negativity to that experience, boom, you are definitely gonna give up, friend. And I don't want that for you. And I think somewhere deep down, you don't want that either. So what do you do about this, y'all? You gotta admit this, that words have a lot of power. The words that we use to describe ourselves and our products, they have power. Like, I'm gonna say this too, you probably wouldn't speak terribly about your spouse or your kids, at least I hope. So with that, you don't wanna speak that way about your artwork. Now, on the flip side to this, I'm not saying that you need to be blindly optimistic and overly positive. Don't look at it at a really flawed drawing and be like, wow, this is incredible, I am amazing. No, look at it and be like, okay, I'm proud of myself for trying this, and I see these things that I could get better at. And that's how I'm gonna proceed forward with it, is I'm gonna focus on those things from now on. See the difference there? You need to be honest with yourself, but you need to be empowering to yourself too. Because if you don't speak nicely to yourself, how do you expect other people to? All right, now, did you really think I was gonna go through an entire video about unhealthy art addictions without talking about these? Yeah, that's right. I'm talking about the big nasty one. I'm talking about the one that most people clicked on this video to watch me talk about. And yes, I'm talking about substances. I'm talking about any substance, by the way. Doesn't matter if it's legal or illegal, if it's common or uncommon, I'm talking about substances. And when we talk about why do artists actually adopt a reliance on substances to mistakenly think that they're somehow getting better or unleashing their creativity or opening the door to what their potentials are, right? Here's at the crux of what it really is. All substances stem from the ability to numb yourself, to not feel things, to not experience things, to block yourself from experiencing certain aspects of things that are happening or will happen in your life. And I see this with a lot of people, and I've researched this a lot too before I made this video on this topic. And I've found this, is that most people just don't want to go through certain things. Some people are in really lousy circumstances. Some people are not happy with their lives. Some people are disappointed in themselves. And some people would rather not feel what they're going through right now or what they have been because they're afraid to challenge that or to experience that instead of actually dealing with it. And so what most people I found in my research, they turn to substances so that they don't have to feel that, so they don't have to think about that. And they become chemically dependent upon substances in order to not think about that. And the actual reason why people come to develop a chemical dependency, aside from biology and genetics here a little bit, taking that into account here, is actually because they are wired to use that substance, and it can even be simple things. It can be coffee, it can be caffeine, and of course we got the big ones like drugs and alcohol in there. The reason why you're actually hooked onto that, chemically speaking here through your brain, is that is how you actually relax yourself. And you think about this in terms of like smoking. Like I grew up, but my parents smoked and I hated every second of it. Like to this day, tell me if this is you down below. Do you hold your breath around people that smoke? Cause like I full on could not walk by somebody who's smoking without holding my breath to this day, cause I just hate the smell of it. But the reason why people smoke, yes, it is the nicotine, but it's also generally the way that they calm down, because when you smoke, you breathe and you breathe out. And what that actually does is it's actually a physiological way for your body to calm down, is through heavy breathing. And there are a lot of different substances that people use for similar circumstances like that. Now, here's another big one too. Do you use substances because you think that somehow you can't be creative without it, or you unlock your highest version of yourself or anything like that? Y'all, I just need to let you know this. That is completely fallacious. The real thing is that you are not taking care of the things outside of your art life, and it's poisoning your art life and blocking you from leaping into those. And so you are mistakenly telling yourself that you're not able to access those higher planes of creativity, or whatever you want to call it, whatever delusion you want to kind of wrap this into, right? The reality is this: you do have access to that. If you have access to it under one condition, you have the ability to create the conditions to actually access that all the time. The question is this: what are you not dealing with in order to do this? What are you numbing yourself from in order to do that? And listen, we all have our vices. I get that, y'all. But listen, when you are reliant on some exterior force, some exterior item in order to be more creative, you really have to ask yourself, what am I avoiding? And does that really benefit you long term? But also, what's the detriment? What's the side effects of that? Think about that, would you? Now, at the core of why we create artwork, what are we seeking to do here and why? A lot of things come into play here and a lot of things come up. The number one thing that we want to accomplish as an artist is to create a human connection. And that is really what artwork is all about. It's us expressing our humanity to another human and thus creating some type of dialogue through it, either internally or externally from it. And then that brings into this too. Are you somebody that avoids that? Are you somebody that doesn't seek that out too? Maybe you have some type of anxiety about it. Maybe you have, from your past experiences in life, it makes sense, I get it, where you don't want to share because you've had bad experiences, because you've had people that have been overly critical, overly negative about your artwork. Maybe you've had also, and this is so sad to me that I even know all this happens, that have you ever had somebody tell you that your art is worthless, or it's a worthless endeavor too, that it's not going to ever be something then, friend? This then leads to a lot of toxic social avoidance. And listen, y'all, I just need to let you know this. You're not going to make it terribly far by only being on your own. You need help, you need support, you need community, and most importantly, you need to start to do things that are going to bring you into more circles of people so that you can go farther and you can do more things, you can get better ideas, and you can stretch your imagination and stretch your skills. And I'm speaking from a very personal level on this. I used to really dislike engaging with other people, and I used to have a lot of anxiety about it, and it was to the point where like I just full on like disconnected with everybody but pretty much just a few people, just close friends, okay? And then one day I kind of came upon this understanding to myself, which is that like, if I really want to affect a lot of people, if I want to hope to impact a lot of people, then I also have to learn how to connect and how to speak with other people. And one thing that I would encourage you to start to do if you're in this boat too is this, friend. Just start to think about what do you need to do just to stretch just a little bit. Maybe you need to just force yourself once a day to engage in small talk with somebody that you normally wouldn't. Or if you have a job, maybe you can be like, okay, I want to just have like a 1-minute conversation with just somebody new here that I've never spoken to about. Maybe too, you need to see this too, is a lot of social interaction is not about you vomiting information about yourself, but you asking questions. So what if you started to think about what types of questions can I engage with other people in? And how can that build some strong connections there? By you engaging and you diving into how to get over and how to work through your social avoidance, and you might need some additional help and resources for that, friend. And if that's you, I fully encourage you to get it. But don't let your past experiences or your past traumas influence your ability to connect or to disconnect with somebody else, because that is a very toxic trait, and I know that you can grow past it too. All right, artists, I think this one's gonna hit pretty hard for you, so let me ask you this. What are you avoiding doing right now? Like this very second, okay? What project do you have in mind that you're not doing, or what assignment that you have for school that you're not doing? Or what are you putting off right now? What do you wish that you did last year that you said you're gonna do this year, but you probably won't do it this year either, right? Because something came up, because something else got in the way, because you didn't feel like it. Tell me what I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about the big P, right? And I'm talking about procrastination. Is this you, friend? Are you somebody that procrastinates all the time? You just keep putting it off and off and off and off and off, and then what happens? Then it never gets done, right? And so many artists struggle with this. Both young and old, I've encountered so many artists that procrastinate. And why is that? We really have to understand what procrastination is, because I think a lot of times it gets mislabeled as you don't care or you're not serious. And I'm gonna tell you this, friend, that's not really the case. What procrastination actually is a mask for insecurity. And I'm telling you this so that you can identify it and then move past it. So you are often way more likely to not try something at all than to try it and to feel embarrassed about it or to feel disappointed in yourself by it. At the root of procrastination, it's just that level of insecurity. And so then this brings into the question, well, how do you get past this? On the other side of this, are you a perfectionist? Are you somebody that does this too? Because guess what? Perfectionism at every step of the way is also a form of procrastination, because what you're gonna do is you're gonna sit and you're gonna linger into some part of your artistic process that you know dang well is not gonna serve the greater purpose of it, but you think it will. And then what does it do? You just get so exhausted and you end up putting off that project and you never even finish it. Or it takes you like 35 hours to do a sketch. Is this you? So how do you get past that? First off, I want to release you from the expectation that everything that you're going to do needs to be perfect. I want to release you from the expectation that everything you want to do is going to be postable, is going to be shareable, is going to be Instagram worthy, is going to be something that's going to bring you social media fame or any nonsense like that. Instead, view yourself as just a work in progress. What I want you to do then is to adopt the attitude of what I call the evergreen noob, meaning that you're going to be open to ideas, you're going to be open to suggestions, and most importantly, you're going to be open to making mistakes. I want you to release yourself from those really toxic, overinflated expectations of yourself and what you're supposed to be doing and what it should look like versus what it does look like. Here's another thing too. I'm a self-proclaimed perfectionist. Hello, my name is Sean. I'm a perfectionist. So here's one way that I thought about this. Instead of you letting perfectionism via procrastination ruin your artwork and your process and your love of it, instead, learn to treat your perfectionism like a switch. You're gonna, boom, turn that thing on, but only at a specific time, y'all. I want you to just learn to only be a perfectionist, to only look at those little tiny small details, those little tiny areas in the last 20% of anything that you're working on. I want you to harness that as a weapon for artistic brilliance, rather than a weapon of your own mass destruction. Can you do that? But most importantly, y'all, the number one thing that you can never procrastinate on is hitting that like and subscribe button. Come on, y'all, I'm here to support you all along your artistic journey. And if you could support me back, I would sure appreciate that. And also, I bet you're gonna appreciate not doing this anymore. Hey, is your tank on E? Are you just completely without any type of energy? Or are you thinking that like every single time that you do fuel yourself, that you don't really feel fueled up for very long? And listen, y'all, I'm not talking about your car. No, I'm talking about what are you putting in your mouth? I'm talking about what are you ingesting all the time and how is that contributing or destroying your potential? One of the things that I could personally relate to, because believe it or not, I used to be 80 pounds heavier on this frame, is the toxic trait of having a terrible diet as an artist. And again, like I definitely have always noticed that artists tend to over glorify this really unsustainably terrible diet. It's full of Cheetos and Mountain Dew and ramen noodles and crap cheap foods that are just not going to sustain you long term. And again, the way that I want you to sort of think about this is, how are you going to fuel the creative vehicle that is yourself when you are just putting sawdust into that? It's just not gonna go anywhere, and it sure as heck isn't gonna go far. Your engine's gonna run well for just a little tiny bit, and then boom, what's gonna happen? You're gonna shut down. Have you ever thought about why you might feel a little bit anxious, why you might feel depressed? Well, it might also be because of the fact that you have a crap diet. So also, on the topic of food, we can't also forget about the topic of hydration. Some 75% of people in the US are dehydrated. Yo, what are you doing when you're not even fueling your basic body? Like, your body is composed of mostly water and you're not giving it water. What are you doing? You drink all kinds of things all day and you never even drink some water? And there are so many people that never touch water pretty much all day. Have you ever thought about how that's destroying your energy and your potential for actually creating artwork or sustaining your efforts or sustaining your focus? It might be that. So now, how do we get through this here? And listen, I get why, because it's easy, because it's quick, because you might even think like, hey, I gotta get back to work here. But listen, how long are you able to really sustain that? It's not very long. So how do you get past this, y'all? No, I'm not saying that you need to go on an all grass-fed, vegan, caveman, paleo diet, Mediterranean diet, anything like that. No, friend, no. All I'm gonna suggest is this. What can you start to do to have a 50% better diet? What can you start to cut out? Like 50% of bad stuff that you're cut out? Because listen, real talk, we all love a cheeseburger, French fries, and a Kit Kat bar every once in a while, right? But what can you do to cut out 50% of that and replace it with things that are actually going to nourish you? What can you start to do right now so that you're gonna have more sustainable fuel? And listen, it's always gonna be hard at first, and I guarantee you this, once you invest into it, you're gonna feel great for a long period of time. It's gonna become a pretty easy habit to keep up because you're gonna wanna feel that level of greatness. And if you feed your physical being, you will be able to also unleash your creative being. Try it out. Now, as an artist, we get inspirations everywhere, right? We have our own favorite shows, we have our own favorite IPs, our own favorite comics, our favorite artists. We have, of course, tons of amazing video games, and we have so many things that we just draw inspiration from. And then a new thing comes out and we get sucked right into that, right? And then this leads to this very lethal and very toxic trait where you're gonna start to delude yourself into thinking that that's somehow actually helping you become a better artist. Have you ever said the phrase to yourself that you're doing research by watching 26 episodes of that show, or you're doing research by playing 7 hours of this game at a time? You're really not. And I think that you're smart enough to know that, aren't you? Because really what you're doing here is that you are just inundating yourself with media consumption. And that is the next most toxic addiction that I've seen way too many artists have, and I'm speaking from personal experience. Because I used to say that somehow me playing 138 hours of Dragon Age Origins would somehow be able to contribute to me drawing that type of genre better. It did give me like a few ideas, but again, what do we learn? Ideas are pretty much worthless unless you actually get them out of your head. So this is a really nasty habit that you really need to get yourself out of. And I just want to encourage you this by asking you this simple question. What is your purpose in life? Are you going to choose to be a creator or to be a consumer? Because one is mindful and one is completely mindless. And not to say that you got to cut out one completely, no friend. Enjoy that stuff every once in a while. But what's your ratio? What's your split? Because just to be honest, if you really feel that your purpose in life is to be a creator, it should be overwhelmingly in favor of actually creating. So what's that split? I would say it's at least 60 to 75% on you creating and less of it actually consuming. This is a really bad culture that is everywhere in the world, and it's actually the product of our conditioning. And this kind of reminds me, I've got a lot to say on this. Would you like to see an entire video about this mindset of being a creator versus a consumer? Because if so, let me know about it down below, because I'm more than happy to pump that out for you to help you out. Artists, I'm gonna go on a limb here and say that you might suffer from this next one here. So tell me a little bit about what's your sleep cycle like? Are you somebody that goes to bed at like 3 o'clock in the morning? Are you somebody that goes to bed at 7 o'clock at night and then wakes up at 5:30? Are you somebody that doesn't even go to bed? Maybe you just stay up all night because that's your creative time. And then you somehow muster the strength to go to work or go to school or whatever after that like couple hours of sleep most of the time. You know what I'm talking about here, y'all. I'm talking about a very toxic sleep cycle. And this is a really nasty habit that I've seen so many artists talk about. And I've got a lot of different things to say about this. And you've probably heard this too, that honestly, like when you rest, that's when your brain actually builds what it needs to. And that's when you actually do improve and you see that sustained improvement. But the thing that I want to say about this that I think is a little unique on here is I'm going to offer some differing opinions on this matter. There are a lot of people that really push you to sleep too much too. And we don't really talk about this a lot because I'm just going to say it, but if you're like 9 to 10 hours a day on sleep, you're not sleeping because you're tired, you're sleeping because you're avoiding. And that's not going to help you either, friend, because if you're not utilizing the time that you have in a day to get to where you want to do, then you're just going to make the excuses that you probably don't want to actually make, right? And then the thing too is that if you're somebody who is a self-proclaimed night owl, are you that person, by the way? Because you're not. It's just the product of conditioning. In other words, like we are literally predisposed to being awake during the day and being asleep at night from a very biological perspective. We can't see at night, we can see in the day, all the predators come out at night, and therefore we sleep, like when you go back to prehistoric times. So don't keep telling yourself that you are a night owl because that's just the way that you're wired. That is empirically false, it's not true, and it's just a product of your own conditioning, which then means that you're also able to condition yourself into a better sleep cycle. So how much sleep should you have? Honestly, it depends on you. Myself personally, I typically function around like 5 to 6 hours of sleep. And people don't talk about this a lot too, but and I know that people don't like to hear this a lot, but it's just honest. But sometimes you do have to sacrifice a little bit to get to where you want to go. Sometimes you do have to sacrifice a little bit of sleep so that you can rest easy and have a better life later. And I'm not saying that you need to like cut out sleep altogether. I don't want this misconstrued, please. What I'm just basically saying is that you have to figure out what works best for you. What can you function at? And also, how much sleep does your body actually need? Because it's different for everybody. But this extreme goes one way or the other, where you have a toxic oversleeping cycle or you have a toxic undersleeping cycle. And neither one of those is a good friend. You got to get that together and you got to experiment with it. So what would you say if I said that the fact that you're addicted to social media is your parents' fault? That's right. So basically, the way I mean by that is because there's this product of what's called mediation that's been in effect for largely the last 100 years. So just think about it like this. Typically, when you come home from school or you come home from work, what do most people do? They would sit down and they would watch TV, and then they would talk in front of the TV, and then they would exist and do their daily chores while the TV is going. And then you would go ahead and you probably eat dinner in front of that TV, and then after that you would be in front of a TV. Ever since TVs became introduced into culture, we kind of have them always present. And then what happened next? Then it was the computer, and then people were always around computers with their parents. And then it was smartphones and tablets and everything that there is right now. So from a very young age, you have been very heavily mediated towards a love of being a consumer of media. And that is a very nasty, toxic trait that we got to talk about, because what has that evolved into? Doom scrolling on social media. Are you somebody that doom scrolls on social media? Well, because most people don't actually watch TV anymore, and instead that they're on their phones. This is the effect of what you've been conditioned to do. So what you really want to ask yourself is, why are you doing that? Well, most of the time, did you know that you're just numbing yourself? You're trying to avoid doing the thing that you actually should be doing. Or here's another thing too. Do you get upset and then boom, you go right to social media, you start to just scroll. You don't even know what you're looking at, right? Again, it's because you're numbing yourself on that. Why this is so terrible for artists, and especially for you, friend, is because it's been literally shown in studies that it's linked to higher levels of anxiety and depression actually forming it too. However, though, of course, social media can be great and it can be helpful, and you can get inspired and you can meet up with other great artists just like yourself. It serves that purpose, and I do fully believe that you can, via osmosis, absorb some things that you're seeing on social media. But here's how you're going to need to get past this. You're going to have to limit that down. You're going to have to recognize and be a little bit more aware, a little bit more cognizant of when you're just wasting time, when you're numbing, and when you're emotionally going for doom scrolling too. What are you feeling right then? What should you dive into? Because there's so many people that won't even go into why they feel the way that they feel, and instead they'll just look to numb themselves. That's the product of our mediation too, friend. And it's a really nasty, toxic trait that if you want to be a better artist and you want to be a better, more productive human being, you're going to have to learn to get past it. Have you ever thought of it like that? So what can you do instead of just scrolling through social media? Think about how you can have inspiration around you off of a phone. Can you get some posters? Can you have some pictures? Can you replace your desktop background on your computer or on your phone with some of your favorite artworks? Can you start to do that so that you're less drawn to social media? Can you put limits on your time too? Like I know TikTok, my wife does this. She only allows herself like an hour a day on TikTok, and it's fun. I get it for you. But the more time you're in that, the less time you're into what you actually want to do. All right, I'm going to give you all a really hot take right now on taking breaks as an artist. And this brings into the conversation a lot of really contrasting opinions that you may or may not like, but I'm afraid you do need to hear, friend. So obviously throughout the day, yeah, you do need to take some breaks, and you need to feel what your energy is like, and you need to feel what you're currently feeling. So am I saying that you shouldn't take breaks? Absolutely not. But the level of physical exhaustion that you're feeling right now, I just want to ask you all this. Where's that coming from? Because there's three types of exhaustion. First off, there's physical exhaustion. Obviously, very biological. You need a break. You're totally exhausted. Maybe you did something really hard. Maybe you did get outside and do some great activity today, right? That's physical exhaustion. If you feel that, sure, take a break, but typically it doesn't need to be that long for it. Like a 30-minute break can just be enough to quell physical exhaustion, or just take like an hour nap. That can do it too. Then you've also got emotional exhaustion. This is where we start to get touchy here, okay? So I get it when things come up in life and things are disfavorable for you and things are sad for you too, okay? And you need to take a break from it. And then what do you do for that? And then lastly, here's another big thing too. The exhaustion of your soul. This is when you're doing things that are misaligned to what you want to do, from your passions, from your actual interests, from the things that are going to bring you to that next level. And so then therefore, what do? Is we take excessive breaks. And every single time we start to hit that comfort zone, we're like, oh, stop, I gotta take a break. And then what do? We just only go to that wall. We only go to that wall. And then we stop and we stop. And we just keep creating just these barriers that don't exist. And we feel like we need to take a break because we're not actually exhausted. We're just feeling lost in our comfort zones. So how do we get past this? So if you're gonna go ahead and take a break, here's my advice for you to be more productive with it. First off, you need to set a limit. How long are you gonna do it? Listen, if you experience some trauma, tragedy, and bad thing in your life, listen, set a break, okay? Is it gonna take you a day? I'm gonna give myself a week. I'm gonna give myself a few days. I'm gonna give myself a month off. That's fine, but set that limit, because honestly, all too often, a break turns into you making excuses to not do what you wanna do, which is in fact gonna make you wanna give up. And in fact, is not gonna feed your soul, and it's actually gonna cause your own artistic death. Which, is that gonna be good for you? I don't think so. Now, while you're here on YouTube, let me ask you this question. How many videos do you have queued up? How many do you have in your watch later? How much of those are you watching? And then what are you doing with it later? Y'all, I can't tell you how many artists just have loads and loads and loads of videos queued up, and they're watching hours and hours a day of tutorials, somehow thinking that that's gonna make them better. But y'all, that's just not the case. Come on, you know this. Like, for example, can you become an all-star NBA player by watching other people play basketball? No, you can't. So why would you think that it works that way with art? Because it doesn't, friend. So if you're gonna watch tutorials, I want you to be more purposeful. And I also want you to limit it down, instead of you just watching hours and hours and hours of them on end without any purpose. Instead, focus into, what is that going to do? What is that for? What project does that help me with? Because if you approach it like that, then you're actually going to be doing it in such a way that you're actually going to learn something from it, and you're actually going to have something to come back to. On that note too, why don't you go ahead and make some playlists, so that the next time you're lost on how to render a face or how to paint a background, you've got a separate playlist for each of those. And then you can, when you hit those walls, when you have those questions, you can go back to it. But if you're just watching loads of tutorials, you're just consuming to avoid rather than consuming to create. See how that works? Now, all of these toxic habits and toxic addictions, they're gonna destroy your energy and destroy your potential, and you're probably not gonna feel very energized to create art, are you, friend? So listen, I've got this crazy, successful formula I wanna give to you on how to have infinite art energy, and you can watch it right here. Go check it out.